As we enter March of 2024, former President Trump has taken a solid lead in many key battleground states. In Arizona, Trump leads by 5.2%. In Georgia, his lead is 5.7%, while in North Carolina, Trump leads by another very healthy 5.5% margin. And so with the former president ahead by so much in these so-called battleground states, are there other states that aren't typically seen as being ultra-competitive that Trump could actually flip this November? And the answer to that question is a resounding yes. According to the only poll released from Maine so far, Donald Trump has a 6% lead over Biden in a state that Republicans haven't won since 1988. In this video, we're going to take a look at other states that weren't very competitive in 2020, but are certainly in play for Trump in 2024. So essentially, this map is going to show the best case scenario for Donald Trump in November, and if that is going to happen, Joe Biden is not going to win his solid states by nearly as large of a margin as he typically does. States like Washington and Oregon are only going to be likely. California is still going to be solid, and so is Hawaii, but a state like Illinois is definitely going to be much closer. New York is only going to be a likely state, and you'll have some solid states here in the Northeast, but many of them Connecticut, New Jersey, not Delaware, Maryland, but many of these northeastern states that were very solid for Biden in 2020 are going to become more competitive. And that first district of Maine, it's very blue. It will also retain its solid Democratic status. And so with the solid and likely states filled in now for Biden, he only has 181 electoral votes, much less than he typically does, while Donald Trump is going to easily win nearly every state in the middle of the country. And so essentially what we're doing in this video is we're expanding the battleground states map. There are not just going to be the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada anymore. We're going to include other states that Joe Biden might have had a pretty easy time winning in 2020, but Hillary Clinton struggled to win in 2016 and are going to be much more competitive in 2024 than they were last time. So Donald Trump is going to have no trouble winning Iowa and Ohio. I mean, if you just go back 12 years, in 2012, these were blue states. Both Iowa and Ohio were key battlegrounds in 2016 that Trump easily won, and most recently in 2020, Trump won them by nearly the same margin. So these two states can no longer be called competitive. They are firmly in the Republican column. Other solid Trump states on this map include Texas and Florida. Trump only won Texas by 5 points last time and Florida by 3.3. However, these states are showing very different trends. In 2016, Trump won Florida by just 1 point and Texas by 9. But in 2024, Donald Trump has led in every single poll from Texas, and he's leading by very healthy margins. Donald Trump is the clear favorite in Texas, and in the best case scenario for him, he would undoubtedly win this solid red state by a solid margin. On the Senate level and the gubernatorial level, Texas is still a very safe red state. Florida, on the other hand, has gone from being one of the pure toss-ups to being another key member of the Republican coalition. If you look at the latest polling from Florida, we have one from November and one from December. Trump leads by double-digit margins. This would have been unheard of just 3 election cycles ago. I mean, look at the election of 2012. Barack Obama wins re-election and wins Florida by just 0.88%. Look at all of the states that voted to the left or to the right of Florida. Florida was in the dead center. Now it isn't even one of the states in play, and we don't even have that much polling from the state, as of course the last poll was conducted 3 months ago. So Florida is going to be a solid red as well, and so is Alaska. 3 electoral votes. Donald Trump leads by 12% in the most recent poll, despite only carrying the state by 10 points last time. So with all of these solid states for Trump filled in, we have 218, and then with the addition of the very solid red 2nd District of Maine, 219, to Biden's 181. Before I continue, only 13% of you guys are subscribed, so please take this time to consider subscribing and help us reach 100,000 subscribers. Now, coming back to the map, these are going to be the real competitive states, instead of like in 2020 where Iowa and Ohio, these were states that had a lot of attention, or Texas and Florida. I mean, these four states are just gone for Joe Biden. By default, these states have no chance at voting blue in 2024. However, states like Colorado, Virginia, these states are now genuinely in play. And in a best case scenario for Donald Trump, a state like Arizona isn't even going to be close. 5.2% is Trump's lead in the state. And if you look at prior polling, Joe Biden hasn't led in a single poll in the state of Arizona going all the way back to April of last year. It's been nearly a year since Biden led by just 1 percentage point in any presidential poll from the state. So Joe Biden might have flipped Arizona in 2020 and became the first Democrat to do so since Bill Clinton in 1996, but he certainly isn't going to hold on to his victory from 2020. Arizona is going to be likely Republican in a best case scenario for Trump. In neighboring Nevada, things get even crazier. This is a state that Donald Trump has never won before. Republicans haven't won the Silver State since Bush in 2004, and Trump winning it in 2020 would have been a huge surprise, let alone now in 2024. I think it really says a lot about Biden's campaign that Trump leads by 7.7% in the state of Nevada, a state he did not win in 2016, he did not win in 2020. I mean, just look at the polling. Biden hasn't led since all the way back in October, and according to the most recent polling, Trump leads by double digits in the latest New York Times and Siena College poll, which is one of the most reputable pollsters out there. And if you look at the polling from 2020, this is before Joe Biden won Nevada by 2.4%. Nevada was supposed to go to Biden by 5.3%. So I'm not going to place Nevada into the likely Republican category just because it still does have a history of voting for Democrats. I'm going to more conservatively place it into the lean Republican column. And what I mean by these margins is anything over 12% is going to be solid, 5 to 12 is going to be likely, 1 to 5 is lean, and anything under 1% is going to be a tilt margin. Nevada also recently elected a Republican governor, defeating incumbent Democrat Steve Sisolak. So Nevada has seen a sharp trend to the right. It is no longer the blue state it was under Barack Obama in 2008. Next up, in Colorado and New Mexico, these two states are slightly better for Biden compared to its two neighbors out west, but in Colorado, Joe Biden only leads by 6.5% compared to his 14-point victory in the previous election. That's just how much Biden has fallen off in Colorado. And so in a best case scenario for Trump, I do still see Biden winning the state, but it is certainly going to be a lot closer than it was last time. In New Mexico, 5 electoral votes, the Hispanic vote is shifting away from the Democratic Party. Yes, Joe Biden is doing well in the polling, but this was from all the way back last year. This PPP poll was conducted by Public Policy, and this poll was conducted in August of 2023, and these Emerson College polls were conducted all the way back in 2022. So these polls are very, very old, and they do not tell the current story of the election. And with Hispanic voters continuing to shift away from Democrats, like I said earlier, I do see a pathway for Donald Trump to win New Mexico this November, and so it is going to be our first tilt state on this map. And now moving up to the Midwest, Minnesota's 10 electoral votes could really go for Donald Trump. Trump is only behind by 3 points in the state. However, in a best case scenario for him, he could definitely beat Biden. I mean, just look at 2016. Hillary Clinton almost lost the state of Minnesota, and a victory for Trump in this state would be a pretty big deal. It's the state with the longest Democratic voting streak. Republicans haven't won Minnesota since Richard Nixon's re-election in 1972. Every other state voted red as well, with the exception of Massachusetts. So Minnesota going red would be a pretty big deal. deal, and it would totally destroy the blue wall that won Democrats' elections from the 90s going all the way until 2016. As you can see, 1992, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, these full blue wall states helped Clinton get elected. In 1996, they helped him get reelected. In 2000, they still voted for Al Gore, even though he lost the election. Same thing for John Kerry in 2004, and in 2008, Barack Obama wins them by even larger margins, and this happened until 2016, when Hillary Clinton loses Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Joe Biden barely won them back in 2020, but if you look at a state like Wisconsin, Joe Biden won it by 0.63%. He came into an office with a 52% approval rating. Now, his approval sits at 37. It is so likely that Trump is going to win Wisconsin just based on how much Biden's popularity has fallen, and for context, Trump's popularity has remained relatively the same since he left office in 2021. The latest polling from Wisconsin shows Trump leading by 1% compared to the final 2020 polling, which suggested that Biden was going to win Wisconsin by 8.4%. So there's no doubt Wisconsin is going to be red, and it is going to be a lean Republican state in the best case scenario for Donald Trump. There's no doubt that Michigan will flip as well. Trump currently leads by 3.6% in this state, and this state is traditionally the most blue out of the three states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So if you exclude Minnesota, Michigan should be the most liberal. However, if you look at the polling, Biden hasn't lit in a poll, again, just like many other states we saw, since way back in October of last year. So Trump is in a very strong position to win the Wolverine state, and just like Wisconsin, Biden was supposed to win Michigan by a pretty big margin, 7.9% according to the final 2020 polling. At one point, he led by a double-digit margin in the state. In the end, Biden did win Michigan by 2.8, but certainly Donald Trump is the favorite now in the state and can definitely win it this November. Pennsylvania is another state that can go to Trump. If you do look at the latest polling, though, yes, Donald Trump is ahead by just 0.2%. Joe Biden actually led in a few polls from January of this year. However, Trump's 0.2% lead is still pretty big if you consider the fact that Joe Biden was supposed to win the Keystone State by 5 points in 2020, but only won by 1.2. And of course, in a best case scenario for Donald Trump, he is certainly going to win the state of Pennsylvania, and he will take the entire blue wall and flip it all red, which means that in the Midwest, the only blue state left is Illinois. Now, before we move on to these northeastern states, I'm going to start off with North Carolina and Georgia just to get them out of the way. I mean, North Carolina, it's just not going to be close. It's going to be a Trump victory here. I mean, look at the polling here. Trump is easily going to win. He won the state by 1% last time. He was supposed to lose, according to the polling. Joe Biden was supposed to win North Carolina, but Trump is going to win it, and it's not even going to be that contested. North Carolina is just like Florida. It is going to be much redder than it was last time. Same thing with Georgia, 16 electoral votes. I mean, just look at the state, 5.7% in favor of Trump. We saw Brian Kemp easily get reelected over Stacey Abrams in 2022 during the midterms. Biden hasn't led in a poll in Georgia, again, since all the way back in 2022. If you look at the polling here, this is November of 2022 because November of 2023 was all the way up here. So Joe Biden has no chance in Georgia. Yes, he flipped it in 2020. He won it by 0.24%. This was the closest state, but it's not going to happen for him again. Georgia is also going to be likely Republican. Up in Maine, 2 electoral votes. This is the at-large vote. We already know Biden's going to win the first district and Trump is going to win the second. However, Trump has taken the lead in the state as a whole. In 2020, Biden won Maine by 9%. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won it by just 2.9%. So Maine is certainly in play, despite the state not having gone red since 1988. So when we look at Maine now in 2024, Donald Trump leads in the only poll conducted so far. 6 percentage points is his margin. There was also an earlier poll that showed Trump ahead by 1%. Now, this is not on Real Clear Politics, but On 538, you can find that poll. The state of Maine is going to go red according to the numbers. However, I think it is still going to be very, very close. I'm going to place it into that tilt Republican category still, even though Trump leads by a staggering 6 points. In New Hampshire, Donald Trump is behind in the latest poll, but Nikki Haley does manage to beat out Biden, which means that there is a weakness there for Biden. Republicans can still win this granite state, and in 2016, Hillary Clinton also came very close to losing New Hampshire, winning by just 0.37%. New Hampshire hasn't always been that blue of a state. Go back to just 2004, it voted for John Kerry by 1%, and in 2000, George W. Bush won it by around the same margin. So New Hampshire can certainly go red and is going to be another tilt Republican state in Trump's best case scenario, while in the 2nd District of Nebraska, Trump won it by 2 points in 2016. He can win it by a similar margin in his best case scenario. And finally, in Virginia, 13 electoral votes. Biden won it by 10 points in 2020. Clinton won it by just 5 in 2016. However, in 2021, Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, was elected governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and with Nikki Haley actually leading Joe Biden in one of the polls from earlier this year. Yes, Biden is still definitely up, but if Biden's popularity continues to flip, Trump can certainly flip the Commonwealth of Virginia, a state that hasn't voted red since all the way back in 2004. So this is the best case scenario for Donald Trump if he continues to rise in popularity as he has been over the last few months. He can certainly win 347 electoral votes, a modern day electoral landslide to Joe Biden's 191. It isn't even going to be close. The electoral map is going to expand to include states like Minnesota, Virginia, New Mexico, New Hampshire, and Maine as states that will actually matter, not just focusing on states like Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina that Trump is nearly guaranteed to win at this point.